let's get back to the sort of bread and butter of our conversation about English, about teaching and learning. You mentioned earlier about so your fluency course. Yeah, this is what the CPD course that your school has designed about fluency. And one of the things you mentioned was about building reflexes. Um, that's a term that I hadn't heard, but I understand the concept, but I hadn't heard it called a reflex before until I started reading some of your content. Could you explain what that means? What is reflex teaching, and am I using the correct terminology even?
Well, I would, if anybody wants to dig deeper into that, what I would recommend is to look up Dr. K. Anders Ericsson, Deliberate Practice.
Ericsson, did you say?
Ericsson.
Mm-hmm.
This is a wonderful doctor who studied psychology and sadly passed away last year, 2020. But he had been doing great work on, he calls it deliberate practice. What he had been doing is not specific to language learning. He was following how experts develop their expertise. And in one example, he did point out that it took about 10,000 hours for someone to reach their level of expertise. So in pop culture, there are a few people that just took that and made it into a rule. If you ever hear him associated to that rule, he debunked it. He said, that is absolutely a misinterpretation of my work. It was just one example. This idea that it takes 10,000 hours to develop expertise in anything is not true. That's not what he's about. What he is about is this deliberate practice. And we teachers all know the old saying that practice makes perfect. We all know that drilling exercises exist. He went deeper into finding out what kind of drilling exercises really work efficiently and what kind of, let's say, pressures you need to put on the individual to maximize, to develop these instincts, these reflexes, to automate certain skills in a certain way. A simple example is if you ask anybody probably of our generation, the young generation, they only know digital watches and clocks, so it's not the same thing. But probably our generation, you can ask anyone to look at a clock, ask what time is it, and they answer like this. It's 10 past 8. Did they go through the whole motion of, wait, so the small hand is pointing at the 8, that means 8. Okay, the big hand is pointing at the 2, but that's the big hand. So the 2, I've got to multiply by 5, it makes 10. No, they've done it so many times in their childhood that it's become automated. And same thing goes with the grammar of your L1. Why can't most native speakers explain grammar of their own language unless they're trained, unless they're educated in that? Let's face it. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I trained to teach English, I had to learn all the English grammar. I didn't know what our teacher, the first training session goes, so past continuous, come on guys, what is it? And we're all looking at each other like, what?
Say what?
What? We don't, L1 speakers don't really need to explain their grammar because it's been internalized and automated.
So this whole idea, what you're talking about here with reflexes is, so to speak, automaticity. So there was a time when for me and you, it was difficult to read a letter. We had to spell it out saying that's okay, that's an A, that's a P, and eventually we could read the word apple. So there was a time when that was a hurdle which we needed to jump over. But after you do it so many times, it just becomes automatic. And like the example with the clock, there is no information processing that happens in terms of what is the function of the big hand, what is the value of that number, how much do I need to multiply it by. You simply recognize the shape. And that's how you read a word, right? You don't actually look at the individual letters, which is why you can read a word even if the middle letters are jumbled up and the letters on the extremes are in the same place, because you recognize the shape of the word. And that's actually why. And this is here's something that Europe can learn from the UK. If you look at the signs in the UK, they're much easier to read than, for example, in France, because French road signs are all capitals. You ever notice this? In the UK, road signs is a capital letter and then all lowercase. And it's just that split-second difference, because you are so much used to seeing the word, for example, London with a capital L and then little letters than all capitals, that it's much easier to recognize. You see the shape before you read the letters, right? So
I never thought of that.
Well, there we go. There we
It
go.
makes sense.
Not really relevant to teaching English, but well, maybe it is. I don't know. So how does this...
I see what you mean. It is kind of relevant. You are explaining this this idea that students need to internalize and automate certain aspects of their language skill development. It's something. If you have the shape of the word, the shape works with practically every aspect of the language as well, and not everything. Soft skills, communication skills, that's different. We follow things like project-based learning, task-based approach, things like that to develop communication skills, soft skills. But when it comes down to just vocabulary, grammar, all that kind of, the engine part of the language, you need to master it to be able to express yourself. Now, there are different ways you can express yourself, but that engine part, you just need to build those reflexes. That's how I explain it in short.
Yeah, and you've taken it a step further now. So I'm talking about literally recognizing the shape of words, but I mean, in some sense, you could say that grammar structures, they also have a quote unquote shape. And when I use present simple or past continuous, I'm not thinking, okay, I need to think about a process in the past. I'm going to use past continuous. What's my auxiliary? No, I just quote unquote recognize the shape of that structure and automatically use it, just like I would know that the time is 20 to 12 or what it is in the UK. Yeah, very interesting.